Hello, everyone. Good morning. Today we will see some really interesting topics with some experts in HR and technology side. So let me introduce you to Christina Briggs. Christina Briggs, welcome to this conversation and to this Global Digital Week.
Thank you, Guillermo. Thank you for the introduction. And for this session, we're looking at human resources and the impact that technology is having on professionals in the human resource arena. We are increasingly finding that there's so much pressure with human resource professionals to know more about technology, to be at the table. I am delighted to have Norma Mooney from the UK with me. She's worked with many multinational organizations Norma, with a couple of decades of experience at board level, and she has seen the change in her role. And I'm going to ask Norma to start by telling us what changes have you seen from a technology point of view?
Thank you, Christina. Good to see you both again. So from my perspective, over, and I won't deny it, a couple of decades in the HR world, things have changed. And just throughout that time, I've worked with startups, I've worked in larger international companies, and the demands, as you say, on HR has changed. So for us, it's becoming more tech savvy. There is a drive to use data, which, you know, I think across the world has become a huge driver. But of course, with HR, we need to look at the data from a GDPR perspective and making sure that we're capturing the right data and that we're using it properly. The temptation is with a small company is to maybe go for a big system that can do way too much that you don't end up using and is costly. Whereas I would always suggest that you start small, really get to grips with what it is you need to be able to run your business and then make sure it's scalable for your future plans.
Yeah, Norma, it's getting quite entangled out there. I've read recently that so many companies can have over 100 different technology areas for their HR function. And the challenge now is to have an integrated system that's seamless. Can you offer any advice to our listeners in this area or experience?
Right. Yes, there's especially in larger companies, or for the company that I currently work with, there are a number of HR systems that might have come via an acquisition, or they were just deemed to be right for what was needed at the time, but then their interface with other parts of the HR portfolio, which is quite broad, ranging from anything to applicant, attraction, tracking, going through the whole recruitment process, the onboarding, your general personnel files, as it were, all the way through the employee lifestyle. So there's so many different systems out there. And the reality is trying to get those systems to integrate is almost impossible if you have too many. It's probably worth looking at what I would almost call an ERP scenario and working out what is really important to you, because the more integrations I find that you have between system to system, the more likely it is to go
yes to go into difficulties.
Oh, yes. And then there's bugs. And then you find that despite all the requirements, so it will start with a requirements analysis. And you have to be mindful that the people who are working with you from the systems company will very often say to you, okay, of course we can interface with this other system, until they can't, because funnily enough, that other system is maybe a few years out of date, or there's other bits when it was built that they didn't envisage a future where it would need to interact. So you're much better off really sitting back, looking at what your needs are right now, looking at your projected company growth, and then finding, your budget and then working something towards that. But it might be starting off again and saying, actually, let's plan this out. And for me, the word planning, when it comes to any form of technology, it's not just planning what you want for now. It's really looking and thinking and engaging with the business to see what's needed for the next 5, 10, beyond that, it becomes more challenging. But, really look at where your growth is and what you need.
Yeah.
Yes, Norma. Now, of course, we're going to have many people listening. This session is particularly for small and medium-sized enterprises. So they're in a great position now to start getting it right, because I know a lot of the companies you work for, they have had mergers and acquisitions, and they have been quite entangled. So it really is useful to have this time to give them the advice. So I do appreciate your answer to that question. So what I heard is that you really need to sit and plan and discuss and make sure that the size is suitable for your organization and your projected growth. And also what I heard was buyer beware, because every software provider is going to tell you that they can achieve it and it can be integrated. So there is a certain amount of due diligence that needs to be taken place. I now have a related question to this. Of course, I know trying to get buy-in from stakeholders is very complicated, because first of all, we have to get sign-off with budget from the board. That's after we've decided the right technology. And then we have to train personnel. And now I know organizations, they've had to change the personnel because they've not been, if you like, digital natives, or not really been interested in this next evolution of the HR function. So can you just talk around your experience of getting buy-in from the whole team, the whole organization, and whether you've actually had to change the function and how it operates to accommodate technology?
So I suppose on that journey, it's about communication from the start. And sometimes depending on the size of your organization, now bearing in mind, I've worked in companies where there were 140 people in the HR team across the whole, sort of area, the whole sort of umbrella of HR, to, myself and one other in the UK trying to start up and engage with an overseas company. And I've started, and possibly a lot of the people listening to this will have started with an Excel spreadsheet. And, that these days, it's brilliant, and you can use Power BI and all of that. But the reality is GDPR, for starters, is also another consideration, and how you manage and secure your data. But from people getting buy-in, I think it's very important with any change program to explain why you're doing it, to look at the benefits and potentially the disbenefits, which you've highlighted as being maybe needing a change in personnel for people that won't or can't come on that journey. Personally, I think most people will want to, or at least they won't not want to, but they may find it harder. So it's being mindful of that. The other thing that comes in with any form of technology is a degree of automation. Otherwise, apart from some of the other obvious benefits, with a degree of automation, it means that you may not need the same number of people in the team inputting data. And it's being mindful of that at the start, and addressing queries and helping people early doors to look at how they can be trained. The only thing I will say, if that really is not possible, then please treat your people with dignity and respect, and help them to find their place, be it within the company elsewhere or outside.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, Norma, because that's really close to our hearts, Horizons Consulting, because we realize that we are in a world of increasingly transforming and providing efficiency through digital solutions, but we really want to make sure that the humanity in business remains, that we have more time for communication. So, and as HR professionals, we have to lead that way in how to implement change and be respectful that these are people's lives and their futures and careers and opportunities that we manage.
Okay.
Fiona, would you like to comment?
Norma, could you share with us one experience in your career where this kind of technology implementations improve the people's lives? Because I think that it's not just increase the productivity, it's increase that the people make better the job, that they enjoy the job. Do you have some experience related to this?
Absolutely hot off the press. So we have currently changed our applicant tracking system. So in other words, the way you engage from a recruitment perspective with the business. For certain reasons, the applicant tracking system in our HQ in Sweden, a different solution was chosen for the one in the UK, and I report into Sweden. So there are some challenges going on there with our integrations and that. The team in the UK, who were the core users of, and when I say the UK, I mean our sister company in the UK. So I sit in the UK, but I primarily work with Sweden, but we use their services from an IT perspective. They did an awful lot of work, the requirements analysis, and eventually, this system will be everything that they need. But it went live in September. And of course, there was training sessions, there was rollout, there was familiarization, but there's always glitches, and suddenly people going, oh, I didn't think about that. But I did speak with, and I when I was physically in the office, and I still go in up until the latest guidelines, just to engage with people. And the team there were really positive, the team who previously would have had to do an awful lot of hands-on data entry. So the back end, the powerhouse, they were, oh, this is so much better. And I'm thinking, yeah, front end, we're sort of having to do a bit more, but I think it's because you're getting used to the user interface. So the upshot is that it was lovely to see people being really positive. Wow. On the other hand, for those of us that are having to use it and learn something completely new, we're still on that journey. It doesn't do certain things for my part of the business, so that's for me to iron out, and we're working on it. But I can, say that the whole program and the team in the UK were very good about engaging everyone, bringing them on the journey. There was some other restructuring going on in any event. So previously, because of different business changes, but the team that are now in situ are very happy with it, thankfully, at the back end anyhow. So the front end, it's a case of training and user, getting used to having to push different buttons. But, I can see where things are rolled out and you haven't gone through that engagement process. It takes a lot longer to land.
Yeah, that's great.
So Norma, for a small and medium enterprise, there are so many offers to start. What would you say would be the key piece of digital transformation in the HR department that should be implemented for example, a small that they should have in place?
So for me, I think it is digitally being able to secure their employees' files. I think that's a starting point, and having the right processes in place to ensure that they are securely stored. Some years ago, when I worked in the main part of our business, we did a TUPE where we took over a large-scale contract from a known and well-known player in the market, and to go onto a site, in a construction site, where you're finding personnel files in unlocked cupboards was horrific. And just this, and then having people say, but we didn't have any other files, this is it, and the files aren't complete. So for me, having your team data, so your basic, details about your employees, but in a safe and secure way, so that it is GDPR compliant, and that there are guidance in terms of what, the interfaces and who can access that. That's a starting point for an SME. You can then bolt on the payroll, learning and development, the recruitment, all of those elements. But I think you have a duty of care to make sure that what you have for your employees as it stands is something secure and robust, and then that you look at what it may be able to do for you in the future.
That's really helpful. I mean, I think that would help any organization, even as a checklist. Do we have this in place? And that's at the top of the list. That's really, really helpful. Guillermo, do you have any comments?
Actually, because you have a lot of experience, Norma, and I like that to hear experts like you, because 20 years ago, managed technology, it was really different. because you have a big system, really complex, a lot of years in order to do implementation. But right now, they have the companies, the small companies, they have a lot of options. We call plug and play solutions because you can just pay the subscription. And I think that in HR, I don't know, I want to ask you if you have this new solution of technology for HR. Can you recommend some these solutions that you use?
I suppose because our company uses particular systems, I wouldn't necessarily recommend all of them, so I won't go down there. What I have found, and maybe if a company isn't looking to put in place an all singing, all dancing system to begin with, and I'm going to call it out, Microsoft Office Teams is a very sensible way with a proper SharePoint setup and directories. So, for example, when we were going through a transition and I had people in different parts of the business and under lockdown couldn't work remotely, we set up specific teams with absolutely, watertight protocols in order to ensure that we could share candidate information, especially from the recruitment perspective, and that helped us. And with the right, after something's finished, it's deleted, the right to access any particular area is reviewed. So I found that to be very, very helpful. Streaming has been really good for delivering training remotely as well, and helping people to use our systems to do their performance reviews, all of that. So that is a basic starting point, I think, for small and medium companies. But after that, then you need to look at whether you've got the large oracles, you've got companies that, iTrent, Midland, all of those that you can look at to see what's right for your needs.
That's excellent. And it's fair to say now that it's more accessible to companies now. It's like a utility now, isn't it? It's less expensive.
And so much more companies that have been around a number of years are looking at, suddenly going, oh, well, we don't just do accounting. We can now do this and this and this. So I know from the business part that I'm in, we are looking at new finance systems. We're looking at things, and then they're suddenly going, oh, but we can do this. It's okay. We don't need that. Thank you. But, but for companies that might, it's worth exploring and looking at, is there an option to switch on a module further down the line? And so that you're not buying a different system from a different company and then asking them to talk nicely to each other.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of how business information that's requested from the board or your decision making has changed over the past couple of years? The data that you collect and what you're analysing, has that changed?
It has, and not just in line. So like, any company with employees, you want to look at a variety of metrics. And we have, in Skanska, we have a whole range of those that the data team, so there is a large data team, well, I say large, bless them, it's not that large, but, we have dedicated people looking after data, which in a small company, from an HR perspective, you're not likely to have, but they produce dashboards every quarter or every month, depending on what you need, looking at our diversity and inclusiveness the whole way through from, attraction, recruitment, onboarding, and employee, length of service, looking at people who are being promoted, looking at, and again, the diversity and also looking at gender pay gaps. So we report on a quarterly basis on starters, leavers, absenteeism, promotions, our blend of, diversity, which in the UK we can do. That I'm conscious there are people who will listen to this who will not have that same option. But then looking at the gender pay gap, looking at a whole load of other ranges that we can pull from, and then through Excel and into Power BI, present them, because that's the other thing that I find with presenting to a board. Too many data, too many tables, it doesn't work. If you can make something into a chart and show variation and movement, it's much more powerful.
Yes, and something you can put an action to as well.
And that's it. You can look at, we run an annual employee survey across the whole of the global company. But what, in certainly between, we changed providers in 2021, the dashboard, the sort of outcomes from that, every year there is what action was taken on last year. So there is follow-up, but a year is a long time. So we now run pulse surveys on a regular basis, just checking in on the areas that, were highlighted for change, looking at what actions we can take, and then driving that ownership right down to the front line. But, using a pulse survey or, using a quick Microsoft Forms to check in on things, it keeps that engagement going throughout the year.
Excellent. Yeah, that's really helpful, Norma. Guillermo, do you have any questions for Norma?
No. I really enjoyed to hear you, Norma, and see you again. So yeah, it's amazing that we need to improve our actions in order to create value, as you said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But, definitely listening to people and, consulting, but also, as you say, taking action then, because there's no point in collating all that data if you're not going to use it.
Yeah, well, I think for this session or period of time, it has come to a conclusion. And Norma, I really, really appreciate your expertise. We'll provide details in your profile so people can reach out to yourself and to Guillermo if they have any questions. I'm sure they do. I have lots of questions. Norma, you, Guillermo, and I have spent a full day in conferences on any one of these subjects.
Absolutely.
So this, the purpose of this session, this is part of the bigger global week. It's to give people a taste on what they should be thinking about and how they should plan and how they should prioritize. And I know it's a little bit different in the UK than some other parts of the world. But, we are talking about the future of HR. So if you're not already implementing it, then perhaps now's the time to start thinking this is a good starting point. And that's the whole purpose of Global Digital Week. That's all from me until our next session. Thank you.
Lovely.
Yeah. Thank you, Norma.
Thank you both. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.